Hey, so welcome everybody to another episode of Becoming Human podcast. So today I have a really cool concept. So the name of this episode is going to be called What Children Teach Us About Being Free. Now, this idea came to me while me and my son were taking a nap, or actually he started fidgeting around, and we were starting to wake up, which means typically me or my wife end up waking up first, and he's slowly waking up, so we get to marvel at him a little bit and just be in awe, that that whole thing is even possible. But I'm laying there watching him, and he's breathing deeply through his belly, lots of deep belly diaphragm breathing. And this kind of took me back a little bit, right? We always talk about how children are naturally joyful. Well, why is that? Why are children naturally more present than adults? Well, I've been doing deep breathing and meditating for a large portion of my life now. And I remember going back to, it took me back to first learning breath exercises. I was taught breathe into your diaphragm before I even fully understood why. Um, so I want to dig into my notes a little bit and let's kind of go through some things. And I was curious about, like, okay, we know that babies are more joyful, but at what point does it stop? And what point do we coach it out of them? At what point was it maybe coached out of us? So this is kind of what we're exploring today. Um, so babies and young children instinctively breathe with their diaphragm. We just talked about that. This form of breathing pulls in more oxygen, and it stimulates your vagus nerve. So I love the vagus nerve. It goes all throughout your body, but it's a key part of your parasympathetic nervous system, which stimulates rest and digest. And when your body's in rest and digest, then it can heal, it can recover, and you have access to much more energy. So when you're rest and digest, you keep the nervous system balanced and energy flows more freely. In this state, the body is naturally more relaxed, expressive, and present. All right, so what do we mean about, like, I hear people say all the time, and to be honest, I was confused about this for a while too. Like, hey, be present, be present. And I see people like forcing themselves to, like, to be present. And I'm not sure that being present is something that you could force. And the reason I say this, just in my experience, when you have shallow breathing, you're in fight or flight. And even if you force yourself to stay put, some part of you is still anticipating getting out of there. You can't wait to get out of there. And I think about, like, sitting in a classroom, for example, right? You're hunched over in this chair, this desk, or at least I'm hunched over because I'm like twice as tall as everybody else, and the desks are always so much smaller than what's natural for me. But you hunched over in this desk. That naturally promotes shallow breathing because your diaphragm is compressed. You're not enjoying it, right? Especially if it's not a subject that you like in particular. Like, you can't wait to get out of there. But if it's something that intrigues you, now all of a sudden you're more relaxed. Time speeds up. Your breathing is differently, and you can stay put for longer. So when you're tense, using that classroom analogy, when you're tense, I'm not sure that you could actually be present. Physically, of course, you're there, but mentally, you're always anticipating what's next. And I find that to be a common space that a lot of people I interact with are in quite frequently. And to be honest, um, even after years of breath exercises and meditation, that's something that I still have to be consciously cognitive of in certain situations, especially around someone that's very tense. I'll catch myself like, oh man, I haven't took a deep breath into my diaphragm in a few minutes, and I'll have to consciously do it. Um, but it will become more of a reflex, and you will find yourself breathing into your diaphragm just more naturally the more you practice it. All right, so let's move along a little bit. So what happens when we grow up? So as children age, they begin to encounter stress, shame, rules, and expectations. They unconsciously start to tense muscles, stomach, shoulders, and jaw in particular. So I don't know if anyone has ever been in a guided meditation with someone, with someone experienced. One of the instructions that's very common is relax your shoulders, relax your jaw, and breathe deeply into your diaphragm. Slow, deep breaths. Right, so the tension shifts, breathing from higher in the chest to lower in the diaphragm. Right, chest breathing, shallow breaths, less oxygen, less CO2 balance, more anxiety, and of course you're in fight or flight mode. Over time, this becomes habitual, and that becomes your new norm. So, to kind of give you another example, I'm friends with someone, I'm very close with someone who is a very tense, very stressed person. They have habitual rumination just all the time, and every thought is very negative, very pessimistic. In fact, if they do say something positive, they have to instantly follow it up with something negative. It's they have no control over it at this point, and we laugh about it now. So it's not a thing of shame, in terms of our relationship. So one day, hanging out with this person, they're going, just one negative thing after another. Well, I started to see this person as an instrument to sharpen myself. So when I'm around this person, I'm very conscious of my breathing, and I'm just listening, and yeah, very just using that relationship, those interactions as tools to sharpen myself, right? That's way more healthy than avoiding it if you can do it, if you're there. If you're not there, I wouldn't recommend it, because that can drive you crazy too. But we're at the lake. I'm concentrating on my breath and listening for my triggers, listening to this person, and they're going, and he was like, oh, you know what? I think I'm gonna jump in the water now. So we stopped the boat, and he hops in. You hop in cold water, it instantly wants to, it stimulates your nervous system, and your body wants to freeze, and you want to hold your breath. But the way to relax is, of course, like what we've been talking about now, is a deep breath in. And so he hops in and hits the water, and all of the tension just melts away. I realized, wow, this guy probably ain't had a deep breath in a long time. A really long time. And I kid you not, like, instantly, the tone of his conversation changed. Like, instantly. He had optimism in his voice. That quickly. Now, I know this may be an extreme case, but we all know at least one person who's just extremely tense. Now, in this situation, me sitting down and doing the breath exercise on him probably wouldn't have worked. Not in a closed setting. Being in nature and it being just triggered helped, because I have worked with people before where doing a breath exercise is they're just too tense. We need to move and we need to exhaust the body so they get to a point where taking a deep breath feels natural and it doesn't feel like something forced. So the water did that for him instantly, melted away all of that tension. And when he got out of the water, it lasted. Which I'm not surprised it did, but just one breath, one super deep breath lasted for at least about, I don't know, if I had to guess, at least about another 20, 30 minutes, out of the water and in the boat. That's impressive. So for anyone who's questioning the power of the breath and why, it's even a tool you should have in your toolbox, so to speak, in terms of your emotional and mental health. It's priceless. It's another one of those free things that we have readily available to us that we overlook. In fact, so many of the things that's helped me in my journey has been things that I already have. Maybe someone needed to point it out to me, or I needed to be in a space that was quiet enough and I had enough space to think and explore where I started to realize things for myself. But most of the things that I have that have helped me in my transformation, outside of knowledge that was shared, there's been things that I just naturally possess, and that's no different for anybody else. Right now, as we talk about like as a child grows up and stress and shame and rules and expectations start to unconsciously tense the muscles, in particular the jaw, shoulder, stomach. We move into another concept, right? And just in case some people didn't know, the jaw, shoulders, they're triggers for your nervous system, right? Because tense up, you square up, you ready to go. These are triggers for your nervous system. So to relax these things, trigger it in the opposite way. They start to trigger some relaxation and calm, and allow space for deep breathing. So I want to introduce another concept that we talked about this, which I thought was very fascinating when I learned about this, and this was super helpful to me, and that's why I'm sharing it. So as I was going through my transformation process, my journey, and it's a lifelong thing, but as I was starting to make noticeable strides within myself, I would hear a lot of people tell me to keep your ego in check, or had these negative kind of associations with ego, and I didn't really understand. Like, I knew what they meant in general, but it's like, okay, what is the ego? I never really got any clarity on it. Sometimes ego and subconscious, these things could get confused. I just never really had any clarity, and I've learned in my experience, and I would imagine this is the same for many other people, it's hard to actually address something when you don't understand what it is. So, my progress was intentional, but at the same time, I wasn't fully understanding. The work itself was working, but in order for me to fully make transformations that I wanted to make and are still making, I needed to understand more, enhance my knowledge. And I came across a concept from a philosopher named Alan Watts. And he's very popular, and he's done a lot of incredible work. And his insight about the ego is the ego is a learned layer of defense and contraction we put between ourselves and life. So in body terms, this looks like tightness, restricted breath, and guarded posture. Very tangible, right? when I learned that, I'm like, oh, okay, so my ego is a learned behavior, huh? So I could tangibly touch my ego, or at least the response that I'm having, right? And I could tangibly trigger a different response. So I thought this was super powerful, and so I want to share um, a little experiment as to how some of these things even come to be. So I'm gonna get it pulled up right here. Let's see. All right, so I want to share this little Albert experiment. And this experiment was done by a behavioralism um, psychologist, John Watson. Uh, I'll use a lot of psychology for stuff, and um, because that fascinates me, and I study it, and I'm studying it. But a lot of psychology has to do with the nervous system, um, because it communicates directly with the brain, and psychology is the study of the brain through behavior. And so me studying psychology is me reverse engineering the effects that meditation and breath exercises and all of these practices has had on my life over the years. And the more I could better understand the science of it, then maybe the better connection we could have with people, and make transformation more readily available for people when they're ready. So this experiment, so what John Watson wanted to do was, he believed that the principle of classical conditioning could be used to condition emotions. So what classical conditioning is most famous for is Pavlov's experiment with the dogs that he kind of did accidentally, came across accidentally, but it became a very popular one, and he kind of became a psychologist accidentally. That wasn't what he intended to be, but his work ended up being profound. So John Watson wanted to take that experiment and replicate it to see if he could condition human emotions. All right, so the little Albert experiment. So I'll kind of paint a picture, and I'll paint it the way it was taught to me, because I think it was very helpful. So let's say you take a little baby. You show a baby, this tiny baby, a mouse for the first time, a living mouse, a mouse that grows into a rat, a mouse. You show this baby a mouse for the first time. The baby may think nothing of it. In fact, they may even be curious about it. I know my baby loves looking at our dogs, and they're kids who grow up around all types of animals. So, the baby may think nothing of it. Now, let's say you're around a baby and you pop a balloon. For a lot of babies, that popping of the balloon might startle that baby, and they may jump and they may cry. So now you've established something that stimulates a fear response within the baby, popping a balloon. Now you show the baby the mouse, and then every time you show the baby the mouse, you pop the balloon. Now, don't do this at home, because this experiment is actually kind of frowned upon, and to my understanding, it's not legal anymore in control settings because of the harm it can cause. Now, so as you continue, every time you show the mouse to the baby, you pop the balloon. Every time you show the mouse to the baby, you pop the balloon. Over time, the baby starts to associate the mouse with fear. That's simple. So now, but it goes beyond just that baby being an infant and being afraid of the mouse. This baby may unconsciously grow up and have a phobia of all furry things, and may not even fully be aware of where it came from. Right? Now, I share this because you'll hear me talk about environment a whole lot, and how environment is so important to reshape how your outer environment is so important when you want to reshape your inner environment. You'll hear me talk about that a lot. And so I use this experiment because um, we've all been trained by our environment unconsciously. Uh, I hear people talk about, um, they go home and they see that couch, good luck. They ain't going back out to work out. Um, that's a conditioning, um, unconscious conditioning. And if you look around your house, you'll see you've been conditioned in many ways like that. You want to start a diet or make some shifts in your health, and you walk past a particular cabinet where all your snacks are, and you tell yourself, all right, I'll do it tomorrow, just one more time. It's conditioning. So we've been trained by our environment, and what meditation, what deep breathing helps us do, just like a child, is help us become more in control of our emotional state. Therefore, we can fix our environment to align with our intentions, right? So we can do this consciously, where a baby may not be able to. They're very present, but and they're not experiencing the stress of temptation the way we are as adults. But we can fix our environment to align with our intention, and this is so healthy. This is literally one of the healthiest things you can do in regards to your mental health, your physical health, even energetically and spiritually. When you're not feeling tempted all the time, you can relax more, and we've talked about some of the benefits of being able to do that. You'll heal from things. All right, so let's see. So, recap a little bit of the science. So, breathing from your diaphragm, belly breathing, activates relaxation responses, improves circulation, stabilizes mood. Chest breathing increases cortisol levels, stress hormones, activates sympathetic nervous system, and can reduce vocal resonance or expression. So your breathing and your voice are linked. Shallow breathing restricts vocal cords, flatter, weaker self-expression. So this is very present for me, having been an audio engineer for a lot of years. I'm very accustomed to singers and vocal coaches telling singers, hey, dig into your diaphragm, and breathe into your diaphragm, deep breath, and watch them do breath exercises again, before I was fully connecting the dots. And you would see singers tap into great performances. They're more present, and not only are they more present, the breath, their voice is more present. And so for any singers out there, it's powerful. And in my experience, a lot of singers, they acknowledge that. They acknowledge the power of breath in that regard. And who knows, a lot of singers may be strong advocates for breath exercises. I haven't, talked to many of them, which is surprising about that. I should. Psychology links. Wilhelm Reich and Alexander Lowen, bioenergetic scientists, argued that repressed emotions create muscular armoring, chronic tightness, and literally holds back energy and expression. So that's essentially what we've been talking about. So to recap, so if we get the main points, what we want to walk away with. When we tense up, we restrict airflow and suppress self-expression. All right, and we went over how that has a negative effect on your body, on all levels, psychologically, physically. We talked about how the ego can be seen as the learned tension pattern that cuts us off from free natural being. So, common thread is expression and how vital that is for a life to express itself, and uh, how detrimental it is for a life when expression is suppressed, and how we can unintentionally and unconsciously learn to self-suppress and not fully be aware of where it came from. So return into diaphragm breathing like a child restores flow, relaxation, and authenticity. Again, authenticity, that expression, that being. Um, I firmly believe that that's my ultimate goal in life, and everyone's purpose in life is to be able to express themselves fully. Um, so this isn't just a metaphor, as sometimes it can be seen as in some circles. It's measurable, right? You can measure oxygen intake. You can measure how well oxygen intake regulates your nervous system. You can measure hormone balance, and you can even measure brainwave states. So there's tons of research out there on this. You know, so you could look these things up, and you could dig deep into them like I do. But it's really good to hear these things from different perspectives, because sometimes a person could just speak your language and you can hear it from them, but may not be able to hear it from someone else. And so that's why we share. All right. So, you know, when you feel tense, when you feel stressed, breathe like a child. So, as always, I hope this message reach whoever it needs to reach, and you know, I'll always share things that have helped me, and I know they'll be helpful for someone out there. And you know, I hope you have a wonderful day.